Today we're reviewing one of my favorite Android smartphones of 2018. Yes, that's coming from an Apple sheet, but I'm also using the Pixel 3, so ha! Android user, reviewing Android phone, it's therefore fair. And let's dive into why the Razer Phone 2 was a little bit of a disappointment. So obviously on paper there were a lot of things that I was very much looking forward to on the Razer Phone 2. I've never owned a smartphone with a 120 Hertz display, which only the Razer Phone 1 was the only other smartphone that could do that, but I'd never seen one in person, and now anytime I look at this phone and I look at that 120 Hertz, if you're used to looking at different frame rates and stuff like that, it is very noticeable, it is buttery smooth, and it immediately makes all of your other screens feel like they're lagging behind, and I can definitely see why this appeals to the gaming market a little bit. It is bizarre that out of the box it does not come set to default 120 Hertz, given that's like the main selling point. They set it to 90, which to the trained eye is a little bit better than 60 Hertz. It can be noticeable, but for most people out there, you want to take full advantage of all of the detail this display can throw at your eyes, and it's very hard to demonstrate over the camera, and all I can do to describe it is say it's like visual peanut butter. Like, if your eyes could look at something the way peanut butter tastes, that's how good the display looks. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. If you've seen a Razer Phone 2, you know what I'm talking about. The display does not come without its weaknesses, though. We did notice that outdoors it tended to be a little bit dim compared to other smartphones, probably in its caliber and its price point. You can likely get brighter displays out there if you'd like. And obviously, the Razer Phone 2 is rocking fairly big bezels. So Razer does not care for this bezel-less trend of notches and shaving off every bit of chin they can. But that's okay, because a lot of Android companies don't care about making the phone with the biggest screen and the least amount of bezels. Like Google doesn't care either, but at least Razer cares to do something with these big bezels, and that something is have two giant front-facing speakers, and they do sound quite clear. I will say, with all the hype surrounding the stereo speakers on the Razer Phone 2, I thought they would sound a little bit better than they actually do, but I'm still impressed by the fact that this phone can remain water resistant, that's right, IP67 water resistance, and still retain these giant open grill speakers on the front of the device, which means that when you're watching videos, you definitely don't have to worry about your fingers covering up parts of the speaker, and it is definitely optimum for when you're playing games and stuff, that you don't have to worry about your fingers covering up the speakers when you're playing a game like PUBG Mobile and you're holding the phone like this. I think it makes the most amount of sense that on a device oriented towards gamers, they put the speakers on the front. I think that's for the best. It also does not come without its disadvantages, though, as we've discovered, and this could be a deal breaker for a lot of you, that when you have these giant speaker grills on the front of a phone, it is very easy to get dust and sand particles stuck within that front speaker grill. As you may have noticed in some of our cutaway shots, that some of that sand, some of that dust has gotten stuck in the speaker grill. We've tried washing it, we've tried brushing it, and they don't like to come out. We're not sure if they're falling out of the phone sometimes or if we're just pushing them deeper into the speakers. And I've noticed that that's kind of a running theme with this phone, is it's like there's this really nice thing, but it always comes at a cost. Which doesn't mean that overall the phone is bad. I think Razer was very ambitious with this phone, and they did a lot of things that you don't see a ton of other companies doing, like the RGB logo on the back, which is so customizable. You can have it cycle through colors, you can have it be one color, you can have it on all the time, you could only have it on when the screen is on, or you could have it only light up when you get a notification, which I think is great because it's aesthetically cool, but also a little bit functional. So when the phone is sitting down, you can have different apps change the color of the logo if you get notifications from those apps, which is really cool, but it turns out that the placement of that RGB logo comes at a cost. So because of that logo's placement, Razer was not able to put the Qi coil in the back of the Razer Phone 2, and that means that it does not support every single Qi charger out there like most phones do. So typically, no matter who makes the Qi charger, whether it's Witty, whether it's Google, whether it's Samsung, you can drop a smartphone on it that supports Qi charging and it will charge. They advertise the Razer Phone 2 as supporting Qi charging, but because of the coil placement, it's really only ideal on a few selected Qi chargers. Like, we have this one on Wyatt's desk in the gaming room that supports it pretty well, so that's Wyatt's Qi charger. And of course, the $100 RGB Razer Qi charger, which starts at $100 and is sold out. So at first we were like, well, maybe we just need to bite the bullet and buy the stupid RGB Qi charger just so that we can use the brand new feature that this ships with, but they sold out, so we can't buy it. And and most Qi chargers I've tried the Razer Phone 2 on don't work unless you place them sideways or hold them up higher or hold them to the side in a very weird way, and that seems to be the only way to get Qi charging working. So again, it's nice, but there's a little bit of a compromise. Like, for instance, the 120 Hertz display is wonderful, but we've discovered that in the settings and in the camera app, there appears to be no way to activate 60 frames a second on any resolution. Sadly, this is a running problem with a lot of Android phones. They don't like 60 FPS. And this is just Google being stupid with the Pixel. But with this, it's a little sad because you have a display that's capable of running 120 Hertz a second, but yet the camera, you can't configure it to go above 1080 at 30, which is really, really sad. Obviously, no 4K at 60, which sucks given the Snapdragon 845, and this thing is much, much better and faster in terms of Geekbench scores than the Pixel 3 is. So you think the CPU would be able to handle it, but you've got to admit that the cameras in a gaming phone are definitely not really the priority. So this is a 4K video test with the Razer Phone 2. Definitely not the primary reason you want to buy this phone, but 4K at 30. If you're good with 30 for everything, there's that. And also this microphone. And this is the front-facing camera, which has some type of digital video stabilization going on, which is better than shakiness, but it definitely makes things look oddly blurry a lot of the time. So it's able to take fine pictures. If you take a picture and you don't zoom in on it, it'll pretty much look fine. If you have a lot of light, like you're outside, it will obviously take much better pictures than indoors. When we take selfies inside our office, things to be kind of grainy, but you know, they'll get the job done. At the end of the day though, this phone is definitely not the ideal phone if you're someone who takes a lot of pictures and records a lot of videos. Don't buy this phone for that purpose. They will, you know, capture the moment, but don't expect anything over the top. This phone is definitely all about that display and your gaming performance. Obviously though, while it is very good at running games, and I will say I don't play PUBG Mobile that much, when I played it on here, and I've played PUBG Mobile on a few Androids, on a few iPhones, this by far ran it the best. It had the most consistent frame rates, the graphics settings could be turned up all the way to epic, and game run pretty well. In fact, I won the first game I played when I opened it on the Razer Phone 2, so there you have it. If you buy a Razer Phone 2, there's more likelihood of you getting a winner chicken dinner, because I'm not even a gamer, but I was able to win around on that. I get it. It's not that easy. There's probably a lot of bots, but overall though, I do like the blocky design of the Razer Phone 2. It looks very clean, and I also like how ergonomic the button placement is on the Razer Phone 2. So you have your fingerprint reader embedded into the power button on the side, which for one-handed use, it rests right underneath your thumb very, very nicely. And then the volume buttons are also straight in the middle of the phone and very easy to change when you're holding the phone with one hand. The fingerprint reader unlocks the phone pretty reliably, pretty quickly. It's a very snappy unlock. There's no face unlock or anything, but the fingerprint reader for people who can use them, sadly, I can't use them all the time because of my psoriasis, but to the people who can use them, it works fairly well. I'll also mention that battery life on the Razer Phone 2 is okay. It's a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which normally you'd imagine that in like a Note 9 and say this battery is going to last you all day, but the Razer Phone 2 running at 120 Hertz, definitely you start to notice how much battery that drain is on the display, to where if you were to turn off the 120 Hertz, which you can set it to 90 or 60, you'll definitely get a lot better battery out of it. So the 4,000 milliamp hours is not really because the phone has an all-day battery, it's really because it needs that much battery to run at the advertised specs that they list it as. So battery's decent, it'll get through the day okay, but if you really want to make sure that it gets through the day, you're probably going to have to turn off some of those display settings. It does also ship with a USB-C fast charger, so that's a benefit, and it comes with the special Razer USB-C cables which have green on the inside, so if you care about that kind of thing, it's a little bit fancy. But overall though, I have to say that while I was very excited for the Razer Phone 2 for all the things they listed, it definitely let me down in a lot of areas. The speakers were not as great as I was hoping. I thought it was cool that they were utilizing their bezel space with both of these giant front-facing speakers, but the grain gets stuck in them very easily. We haven't had this phone for very long, and it's already collecting dust in that speaker grill, which could probably bother a lot of people. Sound quality is good, but maybe not up to the hype that I was hearing about. The display is really, really gorgeous, and the 120 Hertz is awesome, but outdoors, it starts to struggle a little bit more. They said that the camera was better on the Razer Phone 2, and I believe them, I'm sure it is, but better than the Razer Phone 1, sadly, is just not really saying that much. Battery life on the Razer Phone 2 is also not tremendously good. But overall, I want people to know that you can like a phone and not necessarily want to use it as your daily driver. I have the utmost respect for Razer for doing their own thing in a world where it feels like every Android OEM is just trying to copy what Apple is doing, both in their user interface, their design, and they're just trying to mimic, and provide the cheapest alternative to an iPhone 10 they can. And I want to applaud Razer for doing something different and trying something unique, but I gotta be honest with you, they missed the mark in a lot of areas when it comes to Qi charging. If that's the big new feature that you're advertising this with the glass back and everything, but it doesn't work on any Qi charger, as cool as that RGB logo is, if it's at the sacrifice of function, then it does become kind of stupid. You kind of have to go, wait, why would you do that? The boxy look is cool and unique, but I also have to admit, it does kind of feel a little bit sharper in the hands. And while I like the ergonomic button placements of, it's very easy to reach the power button and the volume, unlike the Note 9, which puts the volume way up high above the Bixby button. This thing doesn't have any useless buttons on it. While they are cool, there's often times I'm picking up the Razer Phone 2 after setting it down on a table and I'm used to grabbing a phone in the middle and I end up clicking the power button on accident, or I end up clicking the volume buttons on accident because I'm used to holding a phone this way. Something I didn't think about when it came to everyday use, but first impressions of the phone were very, very nice. So overall, I have to give the Razer Phone 2 like a letter grade of a C, maybe a C+. I appreciate the originality, and if you're wondering, Drew, you're being biased and you're being more fair towards the Razer Phone 2 than you are the Pixel 3, that's because this phone is made by a much bigger, much richer company and should have less excuses than this phone, which is an up-and-coming smartphone company. They haven't really made a lot of phones in the past. Razer is definitely a way smaller business, and the fact that they were able to get revolutionary features and kind of unique trademarks to their brand in this device for the same price of a Pixel 3, I think that's very impressive. So yes, I am being unnecessarily fair and a little bit more in personal preference when it comes to Razer because I really want them to do good and I want their phone to grow. I hope this phone does well, and I hope Razer listens to all of the complaints so that hopefully next year they can make the Razer Phone 3 and get things even more correctly. If you guys remember last year when the Razer Phone 1 came out, I wasn't that excited, and that's because when reading the tech specs on the Razer Phone 1, I noticed a lot of noticeable problems for a phone of its price. Using an older version of Bluetooth, using older version of Gorilla Glass, so I thought it would be more prone to scratches and scuffs, whereas this is using newer versions of Bluetooth, it's using Gorilla Glass 5, so it's more durable. And I also just think the aesthetic they went for is very, very clean. It looks awesome, and I want to see more Android companies, more Android OEMs do more unique and trademark things that are special to their phone. Like the Asus ROG phone, I'm sure that's also a pretty decent gaming phone. And while it is good at gaming, you still are limited to the Play Store, which means you don't really have the best games in the world to go off of. But everyday use, when you're just navigating the menus, you're texting people, using the phone for everyday things, that 120 Hertz display looks absolutely wonderful. And I can't help but hope that one day Apple's able to implement a ProMotion display onto an iPhone of some sort. Now with the 10R having an LCD display, I think that's somewhat possible. Or maybe one company like Samsung is going to figure out how to make 120 Hertz on an OLED display. Right now, that's not possible. But if they're able to figure out, I can't wait for the technologies that the Razer phone pioneered to be implemented into more mainstream products. So have a ton of respect for the Razer Phone 2, but overall, still kind of a lot of problems with it. But luckily, we don't have to return it because our good friend Wyatt here at the Tailosive office, he loves the phone a lot and he's going to be using it as his daily driver. So let's see what Wyatt likes about the Razer Phone 2. So Wyatt, what do you like about the Razer Phone 2?
I, of course, like the very smooth display. The camera, I don't take much pictures.
Okay.
And
Not much pictures?
I think I took one last year.
One last year.
But besides that, I like the logo on the back. The
nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah.
So why did you really like the Razer Phone 2?
My old phone was broken.
So if you guys have your own thoughts on the Razer Phone 2, or do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's overrated? Let me know down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one. He's going to be using it as his daily driver. So let's see what Wyatt likes about the Razer Phone 2.
It's pretty good. The screen is very smooth. The camera works just fine.
So there you have it.
I like the what's it called? The finger hole.
Wait.